Hello to our lovely audience. Welcome back to the Teacher Experience podcast. We genuinely cannot believe this is our fourth podcast. So we're actually doing it remotely today, which is a first for us. So hopefully all of the audio and the video look fine as per usual and as per the last three. Thank you so much for coming back. If you're new here, I am Miss Wild. I am a science teacher and I've been in the profession for 6 years and I'm currently a lead practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Dearman. I am also a science teacher, but I only teach biology. I am also a Senko. I've been in the job, this is my 4th year now, so still relatively new to the profession compared to some people. But yeah, I do really love my job and can't wait to explore today's conversation with you guys.
So on that, today's conversation is state schools versus private schools. Now, we're in a really fortunate position that Miss Dearman has actually worked in both state and private. So we're just going to explore that today, have a look at the pros and cons. And we're not actually just going to do it from a teacher's perspective today. We are going to do it from a teacher's perspective, but also the parent's perspective, and then also the student's perspective. So what is the pros and cons for both of those? Now, before we get into that, as always, we are going to do our what went well and our even better if from this week. So, Miss Dimon, what went well, please?
Oh, thank you, Miss Wild. So, my WWW, this week has been a big week for me. So, it was mock week at my school. So, we do our mocks in January and February, which I don't think is typical of schools. So, yeah, we've decided to do January and February mocks. Mock week is big for me because I'm in charge of all of the EAAs within Key Stage 4 and 5. So any exam access arrangements is my responsibility. And then I also have A-level and GCSE papers to mark as well. So big, yeah, huge 5 days for me. So I'm exhausted, but it went really well. Specifically, what went well was that every morning I have pupils that I meet that struggle quite a lot with anxiety, and obviously taking their mocks is a huge thing. This is the first time our year 11 pupils have gone through it. So I just have to check in with them every morning. And it's great for them. Like anyone that struggles with anxiety, just to have that teacher, that safe person in school to have in the morning, just to make sure they're okay. So I was really happy with that. My even better if, like I said, my week was really busy and I didn't make that time for myself in the day. So I will always have 15 minutes to myself. And I didn't give myself that 15 minutes. It's so easy during the week to convince yourself that you don't have the time. And I did that this week and I was really busy, but I do really feel the benefit of when I do give myself 15 minutes just to eat my lunch in peace on my own. I just found myself like eating food really quickly, running around. I was stood up eating because I had to run, go make sure his student was okay. And by Friday, I wasn't in the best headspace because I had been really stressed. I know, and I've trialed it in the past, that if I give myself this 15 minutes every day, that it makes such a difference. So yeah, my even better if was I allowed myself to have that 15 minutes a day to eat, go to the toilet.
Amazing how much that can really impact the rest of your day. Interestingly, I found myself doing exactly the same this week. And I literally said, I think 2 podcasts 2 weeks ago, maybe, that I make sure I stop at lunchtime. And this week I caught myself not closing my laptop at break and lunch. And I felt horrendous. I'm actually going to steal your even better if and do the same thing. So guys, this week we are going to be focusing on state versus private. Now we have split this into 3 sections. Like I said, we're going to do the perspective of the teacher, the parent and the student. And we're not just going to look at state and private, we're going to look at state, private and then private boarding. So all the perspectives. Now to start us off, I thought I'd give us just some key facts and figures. Now Tutor4 have released some key facts and figures from 2023. Now, the first one I found was that around 5.9% of all children at school in the UK are attending private schools. So that 5.9% doesn't actually sound like that much, but when you sort of equate that to numbers, that means that there are over 554,000 pupils at UK independent schools. So although 5.9% doesn't sound like much, that is still a lot of pupils that are going through that route for education. Now, we take that number, but there are 16.9% more pupils in independent schools today than there were in 1990. So essentially what we want to look at today is thinking about why is that number increased, and what are the differences? Why are people choosing independent schools more? And are there benefits to independent or is state just as good? We sort of want to explore, is it related to money? Is it related to better education within private? Is it related to the teacher crisis? So lots and lots to explore here. In each term, so each season on the podcast, we will come back to this state versus private education argument. So to start us off with then, we're going to start with the perspective of the teacher. So now, Miss Damon, we know that there's generally, I think the first thing that comes to someone's head when they talk about private school is the money and the fact that people pay to go to private, but then also the longer hours, but then the shorter days. So obviously we're going to explore that as well. So let's start with teacher, and then we're going to split that into state, private and private boarding. So from a perspective of a teacher, can we have a pro and a con for choosing state schools?
Yeah, of course. So like Miss Wild said, I have taught in both state and private. I trained in state. So it's really nice to have that perspective on both. And as I've gone through my career, there has been pros and cons to both. So if we focus on working hours, state working hours, and this was just for my school personally, it might be different at various counties in the country, but for my state school, I had to be there by 8:15. That was the latest time that I could arrive on school site. And then I could leave at 3 p.m. when my lessons finished.
Mm-hmm.
This changed quite a lot when I moved to my private school.
Yeah.
My contracted hours now are 8 a.m. till 4:30. They're my contracted hours. That means I have to be on school site during those hours. If you get a TLR, any leadership role, any sort of responsibility, that time then increases from 8 a.m. till 5:30. So you have to be on school site till 5:30.
It's a long time.
It is a really long time. Going from 3 p.m. I could be home by 3:15 to getting home at 5:45 was quite a big difference. And then private boarding is a whole new level. So again, every private boarding is different. But I went to some interviews at private boarding, and the common theme was that it's 8 till 5 contracted hours. And then one day a week you had to work till 10 p.m. and you had to work Saturday mornings.
I just couldn't.
So it is a huge commitment. Some of the really wealthy private schools offered accommodation on site to teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it makes those working hours a little bit easier because you didn't have to travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 10 p.m. Sorry, my phone fell. So yeah, it was 10 p.m. one night a week and Saturday mornings, which I think is a big commitment. So if we start with state school and looking at the teacher's perspective, the best part was leaving at 3 p.m. for teachers. I got so much of my marking done. I got so much of my lesson planning done before 4, and then I was home by 4:15. It was great. I was really lucky. My school was down the road. I felt like my time in school versus my time at home was really healthy balance. And also the sheer volume of your working environment as a teacher is so loud. It was great to only experience that for 7 hours a day, as opposed from what I experience now is a lot longer. So the finish time was great, and I could get my marking done and my planning done. within those, kind of a healthy working day. In terms of a pro for teaching in private, because the days are longer, my holidays are longer.
Yeah, of
So
course.
this was great for me this was great for me because it means that I break up 2 weeks earlier than I did in state school. Any teacher will tell you our holidays, summer holidays, Christmas holidays, are literally double the price because we have to take our holidays in the school holidays. So they
Yeah,
are
I was
like
going to say,
double
if
the price.
are your holidays that you book cheaper because you can go outside of the state school holiday?
Yeah, so much cheaper. I'm not joking, they're like half the price. So I go on holiday, I want to say about the 9th of July.
Yeah,
And any state school teachers listening to this are thinking, gosh, I literally break up for my holidays at the end of July. So
yeah.
I get 2 weeks off, my holidays are cheaper because my days are longer, the kids get
That's
longer
a
holidays. So
huge
that's a great
benefit.
one.
I know it sounds
Yeah.
really silly to some people, but actually that's such a big expense that teachers really struggle with. And we struggle with the fact that we're not allowed. It's in our contract. You can't take annual leave. Your holidays are when we tell you your holidays are, and that's it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult because we have to, when you work in state school, you have to pay out to go on holiday because you've got no choice. So I suppose, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a fantastic benefit of private school and private boarding, I assume.
Yeah. And the teacher's salary doesn't reflect with these high holiday costs. It's
Yeah,
not like we have an incredible salary where we can afford to pay to go during school holidays. So that's a massive benefit. Um, in terms of boarding private with working late and working Saturday mornings, the best part about this for teachers is that you get to build such incredible relationships with the pupils. So when you're expected to work till 10 p.m., what that means is that you will go to the boarding house, just check in with everyone, make sure they're okay, sit with them during homework club. So some schools will decide that as soon as the school day is over, they go to homework club before dinner. So you can sit with them during that time, help them. You can go to games with them. So a lot of them, as soon as school finishes, will go and play rugby or football or something. And then you go to dinner with the pupils.
yeah,
So you sit and have dinner with them, and you just have these. It's not like the classroom where it's obviously really structured. You're the teacher, you're teaching them about science or something. You get to have these unstructured conversations with them around dinner table, and you have build such great relationships with them, and that will only positively impact your teaching
yeah,
if you've
absolutely.
already got
I think
these.
one of the biggest bits of advice I always encourage the ITTs and the ECTs to do is run a club. Now, there's suppose the difference there with state is that they don't get paid to run that club, but it's one of those things that we encourage because actually it builds those relationships. Now, if you're getting paid to do that as part of your working hours, it becomes a lot more natural to do, obviously, because it's within your contract. Whereas running clubs in state, it's like, yes, I love to, and when you're there, you really enjoy it because we obviously get enjoyment out of building those relationships with children, and seeing them flourish outside of the standard classroom environment. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah. So if I was to sum up that section, I would say for teachers working in state, you get to leave at 3 p.m. and that is fabulous. I miss it.
hmm,
For teachers working in private, the longer holidays and the cheaper holidays is incredible. And then for the private boarding, the pros for teaching would be that you get to build these relationships with the kids, and your teaching inevitably becomes a lot easier because of it, because they have so much respect for you and you have that mutual relationship. So that would be my overall summary for those three sections.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really, really insightful. Okay, so moving on then, we need to move to the parent perspective. So obviously we've mentioned before, you and I are not currently parents. So we are purely going off our experiences of our friends, our parents, our own parents' friends, and our own parents, and then the parents that we know from working within school. Now, obviously, like we said, we've had the luxury of being able to know parents from a state school and know parents from working in private schools. So, yeah, I suppose, can we hear about the pros and cons across all three for parents then?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the obvious one, which is that for private boarding. So it costs a lot of money for private boarding, and then it also costs a lot of money for just private. There's day only private schools, there's boarding only private schools, and then there's a mixture of both.
Amazing. Thank you.
Obviously, the boarding and the private school is the most expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So the average price that a parent will pay to send their child to private school is 18,000 per
Yeah.
year. That is just fees.
Mm-hmm.
That does not include the uniform. That doesn't include the trips. That doesn't include any extras. So that is just fees for them to attend the school. It
Yeah.
also does not include their food. Yeah, it also doesn't include their food.
Oh, does it
So
not?
no, most of the
Oh,
time.
oh, wow.
Again, every school is different, but most of the time it does not include their food as well. If the fees state that it includes food, it's a good price
Good to
because
know.
most people don't do that. Yeah. So that's the obvious downfall for the parents, that the price at which they pay for their child to attend the school.
Yeah, of course.
A pro for the parents attending private school, this is the one that's not boarding, is that my school finishes at 4 p.m. and every day there is a club available for that people to go to that finishes at 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
And schools do that because a lot of households will have a parent that works or two parents that work. And as we all know, most jobs outside of the education system is 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about this all the time. How do parents pick their kids up at school at 3:15?
Well, it's
What if
often one of those things, isn't it? The kids either have to get public transport, but then when they get home, they're on their own, which obviously if they're above the legal age and can be at home alone, then that's fine. But also that time then becomes unstructured and less safe, because unfortunately we're in a day and age where we don't like to leave children at home, even if they're of the legal limit to be able to stay at home alone. It's not one of those things that parents feel overly comfortable doing. And then if you don't do that, then you need to pay for a childminder or ask family and pull on your friends and family. But if you don't have that option, what are your options?
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't name any jobs that would finish at 3 p.m. I
No.
know, I know that the council around 30 years ago, it used to be really common for them to do flexi hours, which worked really well for working parents, where you could start early and finish early. And loads of mums did that. Those types of jobs aren't available anymore. The council also used to do jobs for parents, particularly mums, that took up these jobs, which was term time only. My mum was one of those people that did that.
Yeah.
Again, those jobs aren't really available anymore. So a massive pro for parents sending their kids to private day is that they can finish at 5:15 every day. The parent can have a full day at work as what is normally expected from society, but not expected by mums, which is bizarre. So yeah, that's a massive pro for parents. A pro for state parents. So when I was thinking about this, I'm comparing it to private boarding, and it's just the fact that parents get to spend time with their kids,
And I think
which
that is huge, isn't it?
huge.
And
Yeah,
the relationships children have with their parents are so important, and they really do help mold the child, what adult the child turns into, because then it molds their
yeah,
personality, because that relationship's really, really, really important.
yeah, absolutely. And if a child does leave school at 3 p.m., they have that opportunity to spend time with their child. Even if that time is spent driving them half an hour to football, where the child then gets to experience and develop their social skills and things like that, even if it's just that time with them, or being that parent that can stand on the side of the football pitch whilst they're playing, just having that opportunity is amazing. And a lot of parents that pick their child up at 5:15, they then have to go home, make dinner, cook. They've kind of lost that time. So that for me would be a massive pro of sending your kids to state school, that they have that time with their kids, which is invaluable.
And I suppose compared to boarding, especially private boarding, obviously parents within private boarding barely get to see their children, and it is literally just in the holidays, whereas at least parents of children that are in state get to see them every evening, and have that quality time. And I suppose sort of if I link back to the point of other childcare, such as using grandparents to look after the children when they get in from school, which is exactly what I had as my childhood. My mum was working, probably didn't get until about 6, and it was my nan and granddad that were at home for me and my brother and I. And the relationship I was able to build with my grandparents, because I saw them every evening, was fantastic. And it's one of those relationships that private school boarding children don't get. But then equally, they get to build really good social skills because they're around other children inside and outside of structured curriculum. So
absolutely.
Pros and cons, isn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. So if I sum up my section for parents, I would say that private boarding is extremely expensive. Private day school is great because pupils can leave at 5:15 and parents have that opportunity to go to work and conform to those normal working hours of 9 till 5. And then for state schools, the pro would be that they get to leave at 3 and spend time with their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that from a parent perspective. Okay, last one then is a student perspective, all three. So interestingly, I found a stat. I was looking at educator, and they said that 40% of UK athletes who won medals in London 2012 Olympics had attended independent schools. So I suppose, although I'm introducing that with your perspective of students across the three, I think that's a really strong stat. The 40% of our UK athletes that got medals at 2012 Olympics went to private school. That's a huge statistic. So I wonder whether that links to private school sporting facilities and the type of activities they get to do because of those extra timings that they have outside of standard curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm too surprised by that statistic. I have seen sports facilities at private schools that are better than universities. They are just incredible. And if you attend this school, you therefore have access to such facilities. Such facilities attracts coaches, PE teachers of a certain standard, of a certain level of qualification, because the facilities are great. And then the pupils therefore have access to that as well. So I think a lot of things unfold because of those facilities are available. It isn't just the facilities, it's the teachers that then attracts, and also the longer days, which we've already discussed.
Yeah.
So I said previously that the after school activity for a lot of the pupils is sports. And if I give rugby as an example, a lot of the boys at private school will spend 3-4 days a week training for their Saturday game.
Yeah.
That just wouldn't happen in state school because they finish at 3 p.m. at state school teaching hours. So I'd say that was a big pro for private school boarding, is that their facilities are incredible. What I would say is that's not true for all private schools. They don't all have these incredible facilities, but a lot of them do. So that's why I say
Yeah,
I'm not
I
too
think if
surprised by that
you
statistic.
private school, you would expect it, wouldn't you? Because of you're paying for this curriculum, you're paying for the facilities, so you'd want the facilities to be really high quality. So it actually surprises me that some private schools don't have those high end facilities available.
Yeah, so it depends really on the focus of the school. So, for example, if a private school focuses on their sport, their sports facilities would be great. They might not be as good as other people's science labs because
Yeah,
another private school's focus could be their science and the research that they do. I actually know of a private school that has a block of science labs, obviously, and then the top floor of the science labs is just a doctor who just does research. And any of the students can get
so
involved at any
cool.
point. Yeah, and he has his own lab, and his whole job is to just be inspirational because that was the focus of that school. So their school's facilities aren't as good as ones that focus on sport, and parents will decide their school based on that.
Private school children, they get a more holistic curriculum, even though some of that's not structured, and they get exposure to these fantastic opportunities, and they get to see a little bit more of the world. They get that more holistic, rounded development because they get to see more, so they get to be inspired and decide that they like doing something that they wouldn't see in everyday life. Whereas I think the children in state school, as much as teachers try unbelievably hard to expose them to lots of different scenarios, it's still easier said than done. And we've
Mm.
got some curriculum to get through. It's like, oh, what we're learning about today means you can go and do this job, and that's about as much time as you've got to give them that extra whole world experience. Whereas I suppose if they've got extra time in private and state, and they've got researchers on site, and they've got people that have more time to spend with children, it's their job to get them involved in extracurricular stuff. So the children are naturally more exposed to lots of activities.
Yeah, definitely. So sorry, my voice is gone. So the pro for private was sports facilities. A negative for the student would definitely be they have less contact time with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Some people obviously manage this really well. Some people struggle with it. Just because they're not seeing their parents every day doesn't mean they're going to have a poor relationship with them or anything like that. It's just something to be aware of and to put more energy into when you know that your pupils aren't seeing their parents as much. So yeah, that would definitely be a potential negative of not of for this pupil not having as much contact time with their parents.
Yeah, cool.
Um, so a pro for state would be that because the pupils can leave at 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
every day, they can go off and do all of the extra clubs that they enjoy that potentially schools don't offer. And there's so many different things that pupils can do these days. I know one of my pupils at school goes off in the evening and does some sort of computer science gaming club in his
Amazing.
town, which is amazing, that we obviously would never offer at school. They can go to things like scouts, guides, all of those clubs that bring so much to their social development
Yeah, of course.
that if you finish school at 5:15 or you didn't leave at all, you wouldn't have access to. And with doing clubs that are outside of your school, it introduces you into so many different types of people.
Yeah, I suppose you get that experience of different socioeconomic status, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religions. And I know you obviously get all of those within private schools. It just broadens it even further. So they really get that
Yeah.
experience of meeting people for the first time, not just knowing the people that they're already with and throwing them into scenarios that they've never been into.
Yeah, because from conversations I have with pupils, the thing that they get most nervous about is meeting people for the first time or
Oh,
doing things in front of people.
yeah.
So if you meet someone in year 7 and then the only people you really socialize it with are those people at school. You don't actually have that ongoing experience of meeting new people, which is the bit that most pupils that I speak to, they find the most anxiety inducing. So being able to leave school at 3, going to do all of these clubs, meeting different people from different towns, there's so much value in that as well. So if I round up that section, I would say that for the pupil, the sports facilities, and therefore in turn the coaches that they have access to, is really incredible. Like you said in that statistic, most of our successful athletes come from private school. For a con of boarding school, it's having less contact time with your parents. And then for a pro for state school, I would say that you get to leave at 3, you get to explore different clubs, you get to meet new people. That would be the roundup for that section.
So we spoke about state schools, and we spoke about the children being able to experience meeting different people and having those multiple opportunities to meet people for the first time and understanding their backgrounds a little bit better, understanding their challenges and understanding their good things within their life. Now, I think both of us can relate to this, because when you and I got to university, actually a lot of people at our university were from private school, and we very quickly realised that their experiences were very different to ours, and we'd obviously come from state schools, and actually their understanding of our background was very limited. So then also linking to that, on sort of the other hand, do children that go to state school, do they understand the background of the children that go to private schools? So maybe there's a job there for both parents, teachers and students to make a conscious effort to experience new situations and new socioeconomic interactions, I suppose. Just to make sure that when they're adults and when they go to university, they can relate to other people and use those experiences, even if it's a state school and a private school organise a one-day swap, or they organise going to a school trip together, and that's the private school and state school children have an opportunity to learn about each other and learn about their style.
They could do sports games against each other.
How amazing would that be?
I know that's something that doesn't happen that often. I remember the school that I went to when I was younger, we never played against private school ever. So yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of scope, there's a lot of room to, at the end of the day, I think all teachers and all parents just want their children to be well-rounded and have those experiences to draw upon when they get to university and beyond. So yeah, I think it's a conversation we can pick up when we keep comparing private versus state. It's very, very exciting. So thank you so much, Miss Dimon. That was awesome conversation, and really, really insightful. So as everyone hopefully knows by now, we end our podcast with our research bite, purely because we love research. Comes with the name of being scientists, I think. So, Dimon, what is your research bite for this week, please?
Thank you. I've been exploring this new term, which actually might not be new to other people, but it is new to me, and it's called workplace well-being. I think there's a lot of confusion about the word well-being anyway, but I've been looking into workplace well-being, and it kind of ties into what I was saying earlier about my 15 minutes I have to have a day.
Yeah.
So I've got written down the definition of workplace well-being, which I'm going to read to you. Workplace well-being: the ability to pursue one's own interests, beliefs, and values in order to gain meaning and happiness in life and professional enrichment.
Okay, good.
And I love that definition, because it's a lot of the reasons why I became a teacher. Before, I worked in corporate and there was no meaning or happiness to my job. Whereas now there's so much that can be gained from being a teacher in terms of achieving this workplace well-being. So there was some research done by Wellbe. It's a website that I love, and I would recommend that anyone goes and has a look at it. And they did an article on the importance of boundaries for schools. And this is specifically for teachers. And they created this 3 set of boundaries that I am trying to adopt. It's really hard when you're a teacher because you just want to do the best by the kids.
Yeah.
And you always put yourself second, which is me when I didn't even give myself time for lunch this week. So they've created these 3 boundaries, and it's really good because you can adapt it to your own life. Like, for example, these 15-minute walks that I go on might not be beneficial to someone else, but they're great for me. So they set 3 boundaries: physical boundaries, workload boundaries, and time boundaries. So when they refer to physical boundaries, they're talking about tasks that you do in school. So one example they give is that you should set a physical boundary of marking at school and not bringing that physical work into your healthy home space.
I so agree. How many times do you go, marking's coming home, marking's going to work, marking's going home, marking's going to work, and it never gets done. Well, it gets done eventually, but the marking just goes homework, homework, homework.
Yeah, and they're saying in this, Wellbe are basically saying that you shouldn't have work objects in your home.
Oh, I love
because that. So physical boundaries. So for example, do not take your work things home. Leave your laptop at work. Do not take tests home to mark. We've then got workload boundaries. So they recommend only agreeing to tasks within your professional capacity and what your contract states. It's really interesting because as a teacher, I would love to know what percentage of my time is actually spent teaching.
Yeah.
And what percentage of my time is actually spent doing other stuff. So they're saying that you should only agree to things within your professional capacity and what you feel comfortable doing. As an ECT recently, you now have to do 2 years as an NQT. So there's a lot of situations where I speak to my friends that are also training where they're put into situations where actually they're not ready for that yet. They're not ready for these conversations with parents. And there's this old-fashioned view that you should be chucked into situations and it's sink or swim.
Yeah.
But actually, that is one of the reasons why we're in this teacher crisis, and why people leave the profession.
I remember I had a this is quite funny. I had to make a phone call because this young lady wasn't attending my lesson. This is years ago now. And I called home and I said, I'm really sorry to be calling you, and unfortunately it's not a positive phone call. However, your daughter hasn't been attending my lesson, so she's been truanting. 1, I'm calling to inform you, but 2, I'm calling to see if we can come up with a plan of how we can tackle this and how we can work as a team to support your daughter. And this parent, bless their heart, broke down on the phone, was saying that she's really struggling at home with her daughter, and didn't know what to do. And it was the moment she turned around and said, please, can you give me advice on how I parent my daughter at home? At the time, I was 22.
Yeah.
Fresh out of university. Chucked into the deep end, like you said. And I sat there thinking, I'm not a parent. And I'm fresh out of university. I can barely look after myself. And you would like parenting advice on your 16-year-old daughter, who's probably closer to my age than she is your age. So, yes, of course I can give you some advice. And my advice is blah, 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 blah. And you hang up and you're like, oh my goodness, did I genuinely just give a parent some advice on parenting?
2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, you would be drinking on a Tuesday night at university.
Literally.
Workload boundaries. So only agreeing to tasks within your professional capacity and what you feel comfortable with. The last one's time boundaries. So setting clear times when you are not prepared to read or respond to work. Reading includes opening your emails.
Oh,
and just read. I do it.
This is one of them. Just don't do it.
I know, and I do it. I deleted the email app off my phone, and then I find myself on Safari typing in outlook.com, logging in. And it's like, why do you do that? Yeah. So I'll go over it just one more time. So the physical boundaries, so not having work within your safe space at home, workload boundaries, only agreeing to tasks at your professional capacity and what you feel comfortable with, and then time boundaries, so setting clear times that you are not prepared to read or respond to any work. That is my research bite for this week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Miss Simon. I really, really like those three. I think they're things that teachers absolutely should be implementing to really start sorting out their workplace well-being. Did I say that right? It's just quickly, what are those three again?
Physical boundaries, workload boundaries, and time boundaries.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that sums us up for today. We really hope you enjoyed our first episode on state versus private schools. There will be more to come next season, but thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to having you listen next week.
Bye. Thanks for listening.